Welcome to my strange little void in time and space. Um, Welcome to all the new homies too, that I may or may not know in real life, but all the more we are intrinsically connected, like particle collisions. um, Big new moon, big new things. But before I talk about it, we'll shake up the stakes a little bit. Because the last time I sang, we seemed to have found a lot more friends. And the last time I sang exactly that, a Choctaw friendship song. Is it? Is it working? Is it working? Yo te le, yo te le, yo te le. Thank you for your expansiveness. New moon in Leo. Let's see. Where's my little graph? New moon in Leo with the sun and Mercury. Mercury in retrograde, of all things. And I know that did happen very recently. And I was away and off exploring the world and living to my fullest. And you know what? There's a bunch more stuff in retrograde too. So I find it funny how we can kind of like jump in anticipation and then find ourselves with that much more to juggle when we were so focused and keen on only being aware of the one. Which is funny because that will come up in this as well. Um, New moon in Leo with the sun and Mercury. Jupiter is in Cancer, which is an exaltation, which is a beautiful placement. However, let's not get carried away with the idea of luck because it does have a lot more to do with your intention and your vibration, your frequency, your capacity for homeostasis. Even which, like, no knocks to the tisms because I myself also struggle with homeostasis in very physical ways sometimes. Obviously, reading definitely brings it out in a lot of ways, and energy work absolutely. Um, in Not interferes, but interacts with it. Venus is in Gemini, which is interesting because of Mars placement. And I feel like this is also macroscopically the ways in which we ultimately get confused with the labelings of ourselves rather than understand the capacity for both particle and wave. And not an amalgamation, but an intertwining of the two, which actually, funny enough, that's exactly what that painting is about. It will be for sale, so stick around. Maybe it can be yours, or maybe some form of it can be yours. Jupiter in Cancer is also very much the type to look on the bright side, the type to see the best in situations, which is a beautiful thing. But let's not get carried away with expectation, running ahead of us or running away with us. Ceres, Eris, Chiron, Neptune, and Saturn are all in Aries, which is an interesting little smorgasbord. There's a lot of overlay, there's a lot of compacting, there's a lot of compounding of those energies. These are wounds and warriors and subliminal and under the surface, and maybe even like boiling over. I know I read something about how the corn sweats and a heat wave coming, and I very much think that that's something that these placements in Aries will also feel through us and will also maybe instigate in us. And with Mars placement and Venus placement and Mercury and that connection, again, I feel it's very interesting how society defines masculine and feminine based on the other. Like almost like what's that word when a word is the same thing backwards and forwards. It creates its own shadow, it creates its own opposite, in that rather than understanding the capacity for both within, for all of the ways that we define masculinity, utmost I think masculinity is honoring, and for all of the ways that we define femininity, I think femininity is ultimately capacity for creation and love. Um, but that does require a chalice of some sort, and that's not that it requires a man. I'd say all the time that I'm the man of my dreams, and that has given me an open road to become the most powerful with my feminine energy as well. They both interact and uplift each other, much like that painting again. So funny. I did not anticipate that. This is just a messy little art room. Um, Sirius, Neptune, and Saturn on top of each other. It's so much more than these small lessons. It's so much more than just like retrograde going back into, like small steps or skip steps or what have you. It's more like skipped memories. It's more like lost memories. It's more like pieces of ourselves that we've forgotten all about. Before I had covered, I'm not covered it. It's very much still present in it. It's just protected by the birds. Um, Go figure. There's an African Asante symbol of Sankofa that I once read a story about, and why I got it tattooed was the idea of going back for pieces of your heart that you left behind, um, only to discover really that following those breadcrumbs ultimately, led you back to self, and to find that no part of you was lost. It in fact grew into something else. And that's very much the emotional displacement that we can have with our own weariness or worry or disdain as well. Um, Oftentimes, especially with Neptune sort of shoving it under the rug, letting the tide take it away, and in a dishonorable way, like I don't want this, so take it, rather than like feeding it to the earth, or giving it to the light, or sitting with the shadows, as scary as that can be. um that retrograde, it already feels, beyond Mercury, that already feels like much more prominent, because it's asking for almost like a clean slate rather than just readdressing steps. It's not just like undoing a few knots, it's sort of starting a new tapestry, which is interesting because that comes, just saying that comes up again later with what I think is blind spots in time, and even just getting back into the city, things look different, feel different. Um, it's funny how quickly things change, and it's almost like you wake up in a new paradigm. It depends on what we make of it, is the key. Pluto and Pallas Athena are in Aquarius, which I think Pluto's also retrograde, which I think has a lot to do with innovation in ideas, and loopholes, but also, again, time jumps. And that's very much the ways in which we can go back into our memory and reassess what that is, because memory is very fluid, because memory is also constantly growing. The things that we remember aren't just stagnantly so, they do live their own lives as we continue to interact with them, which is why pain can exist beyond time and space, and why love can exist beyond time and space. Um, I I typically define love and unconditional as timeless rather than as boundaryless, because ultimately you have to have boundaries in order to represent love in yourself, which is necessary to share it. And to go back to Venus and Mars and Mercury, really, um, I think even in indigenous language, you can learn a lot, or root words or etymology especially for your native tongue, um, of what those words, what masculine and feminine, or what woman and man actually mean. In Talagi, woman is ageyu, which, from my feeling, because I don't know anybody studying the root words of it, uh, would be sort of a derivation of love. I love you is gogeyu, So, if woman is akeyu, that would be of love. And I think masculinity is at most honoring of that. You honor love. You honor of love. You're honoring of love in life. And that is how we intertwine these two things, rather than hold out thinking that we need somebody else to lift us up, or in comparison of ourselves to another in that stature or what have you. Um, the ways in which we fractal like segregate ourselves even in our own minds because of our ideations of these things as separate rather than find unity or uh, similarity or reciprocity in those concepts. It's funny, how do we look for these things even in partners when we don't even know what they are for ourselves? How do we, as you know, as a woman, look for a man when you have no idea what that is or looks like or feels like in yourself, or how you represent that in yourself, how you are, how you hold that stature in yourself, and conversely, men have these ideations of what a woman should be, or could be, but have no idea about their own inner complexities and their own capacity for connection, compassion, expanded horizons. In the same ways that time and space are inseparable, these things are also inseparable within us. So I urge you to consider. Um, let's see. Vesta and Juno and Black Moon Lilith are all in Scorpio and very readily at home. Again, another all exaltation. And I don't think powerful figures that would be represented by these energies, these, very Kali kind of ridden energies, would be the type to wait for anything, or would be the type um, to allow for these loopholes or infiltration of thought or capacity. And they're so tightly knit. It's three sisters. It's three strong mountains, and that can be mountains that crush us, or mountains that we exalt and find stories in, and find connection in, which is why, honestly, mountains bring me to tears so often, because the veins in them remind me so much of my own growth and my own pressure and my own stability, really. And so when you look out into the world, when you see the veins on leaves or the veins in mountains and waterfalls, how do you relate? And what are the stories that they tell you? Um, da, 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 da. Again, with the Venus and Mars is in Virgo, which just very much gives me this my way or the highway thing, because it's also kind of like isolated and on its own, whereas everything else is kind of like finding these continuations or compoundings and other energies or triangulations even within it. And Mars is kind of more so the monkey wrench, which is very much how our own entitlement and ego, not that ego is a terrible thing, but our own entitlement with it, uh, can rush things along to their detriment, which is so funny because it reminds me of like walking or driving. Road rage has been weird, and people are always in a rush and always so impatient because they think that they are the only thing that exists. So much so that I don't think people really consider um, just how their space relates to the machinery that they're operating, and the physics of that really with the environment that they're interacting with, um, or general compassion, general broadened horizons. A lot of people aren't really paying attention, and so there's a lot of blind spots and a lot of surprises in that. And not to just have a very literal driving metaphor, but that's a very literal way in which we can perhaps see that, or feel that. I swear, sometimes you can just listen to the traffic outside your window and get a feel for where Mars's placement is and what it's up to, because so many people move in their Mars and their Venus. Um, but as much as I use the wording of Western astrology, I don't really buy into the sun, moon, rising, da 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 da, because we're operating from a system of lack. There are, in fact, 13 signs. And that more closely relates to the 20 that would exist in ancestral calendars. But because of that, we're often driven to our ego rather than actually aware of uh, the equilibrium between the ways in which we move and the whys in which we move. And that honestly very much feeds the eternal questions that we all have. Who are we? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Um, and ultimately, the ways in which that informs what happens when you die. Um, Consider all of those questions and consider that organized religions, any organized religions that have made promises of those answers, um, are lying. And I in jest, really, I do love those questions, and I may have many answers, but at most, I always have more questions, and I always have more what ifs, and that's what I'm much more interested in. That's what I'm much more interested in exciting and igniting in people is their own what ifs and their own curiosity. I do not want followers. I want uh, a world that's more capable of honor and respect and introspection and independent thought, um, and navigating the intellect with honor to feeling as well, um, but not ruled by it in the ways that we often are. Let me not get sidetracked with how deep these Neptune energies are. It's very much a retrograde parade, planetary parade, retrograde parade with Saturn, Mercury, Neptune, and Pluto. These exaltations, for sure, are great and wonderful, and channel them and live it up, and be open to those energies and be open to highest possibilities, and be open to receiving that which you put out. But rather than just luck, rather than trusting in something outside of yourself, um, as in somebody offering you luck, rather than your reciprocal relationship with the universe, because that's inside of you as well. You can trust in that and trust in you and be able to understand that your intent and your awareness leads you in these directions more so than luck. And if we trust only in luck, then we do have these blind spots as we merge timelines, or as we merge into things that we find ourselves more aligned to, or called to, or invigorated in, or invoking and evoking. Beyond best and worst, I think it's much more about how we equalize, or balance, or neutralize. And I know I've brought this up before, but there's something called a Martini principle, who is a mathematician and created an equation to neutralize, to equalize, to create an ultimate zero, I suppose, rather than comparison. And we often are led into these directions of like make a list of comparison. And I've done that too. It's like, do I want this or do I want this? Let me list the pros and cons, and then like check them off and see what numerical value exists in there. Um, but never underestimate the primes, and utmost comparison between the lines, I think, compounds the negatives, because we are looking for lack, because we are looking for, uh, peeking through the fence, looking through the cracks, and not in a way of investigation, more so in a way of lack of satiation, which you'll never find outside of you. It has to be the ways in which you show up for yourself and create your own ecosystem and understanding. Uh, and that also enables you to give back a lot more life to the system that you're in, the thriving, living system that you're in, and not the puritanical Christian ethno weirdo control system that we all suffer through in this Chiron. Comparison, I think, ultimately can constrict potential, and we are maybe so observant that that it stunts any particle and its ability to find its own exaltation as well. So consider the ways in which you contrast rather than compare, and just in that, illuminates both and neither, and unifies as well. The same thing with painting. Contrasting colors often illuminate the strengths of each other and create a more balanced tonality within the entire piece. And that's something that we absolutely ought to look for within ourselves so that we can resonate within that in other circles. I do 100% think that this leads us to a lot of understanding and discovering of purpose and of the ways in which we want to lead, to live, to love. But again, careful, because religion and politics are absolutely aware of this and are absolutely trying to hijack cause and purpose. I knew something was weird when I was seeing more missionaries and children at that. What an exploitation, yet again, because America doesn't know how to honor, and America has no honor for children. Um, and America has no honor for love. It's all transaction. And I know there's a lot of people trying to understand love and relationships, and the only terms that they have right now are transactionality rather than reciprocity. But is that the system that we want to exist in? Is that the system that we abide? Is that the system that we want to carry home with us? No, most of us, at least. It sure isn't the system that I want, and lucky me, I find more and more reiterations of that in my own ecosystem, reiterations of the kind of reciprocity that I aim to see. So hope is growing. Perhaps that is the most exalted and ought to lead. And I think Jupiter would be very, very welcoming to that concept. And again, with blind spots, the ways in which we're aware even of the horizon, of our broad horizons, of the horizon that we aim for, of the horizons that we seek, we see and we chase. And there's that Pink Floyd song, we run and we run to catch up with the sun, but it's sinking. Something races around to chase you again. I wish I knew it better, but it's similar concept. And the ways in which we see that and we believe in that. But if you were to try to explain to a blind man what the horizon is, they would always be looking for it. And some would argue that that means it doesn't exist. But a lack of tangibility does not mean that you can't feel it. And that's something that I think as a culture that we've been conditioned against, the feeling of it. But it's something that is very much part of that remembrance, part of that reinvigoration, part of that loophole, part of that innovation of ideas, even that possibility, that what if. And so we pull some cards so that we may see a little more clearly on this new moon, though it be a dark moon, and though we may feel these retrogrades in loneliness or isolation or misunderstanding or what have you. What's that song? I know a lot of people hate Elvis, but Blue Moon. Oftentimes, I always think of New Moon, and like I guess Freudian slipped those lyrics instead. And so we find the dream in our hearts. Lovely. My friends, thank you for being here. I appreciate you and your willingness to explore. May we take 3 deep breaths together. And if you so choose, just breathe and find peace and ease. And if you so choose, also make your spine available to energy that may be bestowed upon us from the moon, from the cards, etc., from our own intuition and intellect, even. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. I don't like that. What did I say about comparison constricting? Um, that like I just feel like I have knots in my shoulders and behind my back and like behind my heart and like in my bones. Um, the bones are hollow and do hold spirits. And do hold spirit is our capacity for electricity and energy as well. Um, and why bones and hollow objects are often used in magical workings. Um, are those bad memories? Are those bad spirits? Are those like the ways in which we cut ourselves down and compare ourselves that like cause us to hesitate, that cause us to constrict, that cause us to like uh to tense, which 100% is also like the loss of breath, the loss of, and by loss of breath, the loss of spirit, the loss of life, um, but the loss of breath in the body because we hold our breath. We constrict our breath when our body gets very tense. There's an interesting study about hypodermic needles and like nurses drawing blood and the ways in which it impacts the skin. And interesting studies about the ways in which meditation relieves those things and sort of finds reprieve in the muscle structure. And the many ways that I've used it in life. Uh, what I also see often with like, big dudes getting tattooed and they're like gritting their teeth and tensing their muscles and sort of resisting everything. And so it hurts more rather than if they were to just exhale and allow the muscles to soften and allow their body to absorb that vibration, or find equilibrium in that vibration. 100%. I've absolutely used humming or meditation to get through some of my most painful tattoos, or some particularly trying situations. Um, so I imagine that's what a lot of people are feeling, and it's not feeling great. But we find ways to relieve. We find ways to move. Oh, interesting. I'll put you here. Bottom of the decade of clubs, which is very much um, like a laddering process of options and paths and ways. And you can consider that in many ways. Is this a gradual process? Is this an expansive process? How does hierarchy influence whatever process that you're on? Um, and is that what you're seeking? Are you seeking, like up the career ladder, you're moving up in hierarchy, but that doesn't broaden your horizons, nor does it expand your consciousness. Um, this Eight of Wands, and it's not prime, not vibrating, but it can be equalized. It can be eye to eye. it can be balanced in that way. But oftentimes, I think we just take on so much and consume so much that it becomes imbalanced because now we have so many plates spinning, or now we have so many levers or so many projects or what have you, rather than the way that these things influence each other, or rather than the ways that these things can compound on each other, or broaden horizons, even. Um, Sometimes I think if you know the foundational aspects of one thing that you're interested in, you, rather than like really narrow down that thing, you can find familiarity with those tenets of stability and apply that elsewhere. And this is the ways in which that we find perhaps that we can be a jack of all trades rather than a master of one or none. And exactly that, even in that mentality, the ways in which people feel like they're a master of nothing because they have many hobbies, or because the ways in which this expression has been told to us is that we need to be the best at something. um, be the best you. Ultimately, you are the one thing. You are the only version of you in this timeline, in this plane. So be the best version of you that you can be. And oftentimes, I do think that also informs the other timelines. Not oftentimes, always informs the other timelines. And so when you investigate yourself and you are curious about yourself and the foundational aspects and tenets of you, then you expand on all timelines. And I think that directly affects people like myself, who are a little neurospicy. And sometimes the ways in which maybe we can't explain the way that we're feeling, or there's no noticeable reason for it, but we, wake up and we're like, oh no, this is my mania, or oh no, this is my depression, or like, oh no, I'm, feeling some type of way, feeling extra ADHD or whatever it is. 100%, I think when we don't know exactly where that comes from, it's because it's coming from another plane or another timeline. And if we can explore that, whether it be in dreams or meditation, then we can bring equilibrium to those things and sort of reel them back into the tapestry. And again, that's it's not necessarily unknotting just one thing, although maybe it is just the one timeline, but the ways in which we integrate it and into the major tapestry. And the ways in which maybe we integrate it into an all new tapestry, because now we're much more clear about who we want to be, and all of these timelines, or this particular timeline, has been a challenge toward that, rather than a challenge toward validating the ego, validating tangibility. I think that's why reality is so hard, because we're just so trapped in it, and boxed in by it, and confined and calculated and segregated and severed at our feeling and intuition in so many ways. Um, Other cards for this on the outside was these interesting, beautiful grains. As beautiful as they are, very money grains, very tangible grains, and they are earth signs. They're diamonds that come of the earth, much like mining. We have a nine of diamonds and a seven of diamonds. So it's interesting how we can go. Ooh, even the eight bottom of the deck kind of fits right exactly in there. Um, we go from consumption to sharing. I want to say reciprocity, and I've said that quite a bit actually. Um, but the seven prime vibrating is also an ancestral number. Is also a very sacred number. The ways in which we share our inner world, and the ways in which that validates or puts tears or ripples into our reality, which your feelings about any of those words may not necessarily be what those words mean either. A tear in time is not necessarily a terrible thing, and a ripple in reality is maybe exactly what we need to remind ourselves just how much we can feel and how capable we are in that expansive horizon. like a single pebble drops and ripples expand infinitely. Who knows where it stops, really? And it stops when there's impediment, perhaps, when it hits something else solid, and that's very much the ways in which we collapse our own possibilities. We, compare, and so we hesitate or pull back in some way, shape, or form, rather than continue to share our experience or truth, or I mean, seven coming after six, or the things that we've built, which is very much like on sixes. There's like this triangular sort of pyramid thing, and that's very much the foundations of stability, whether that be your intellect, your intuition, and your will, or your memory and patterning and capacity, or, much like an ohm circuit, your positive, negative, and your resistance, or your breath line, your breath tone, the like thread in which your breath exists on. Um, I was so lucky to see mine on my birthday, actually. Uh, and we all can. We absolutely all can. We can feel it. We can grow with it. It's an incredible discovery of the self when you realize that your breath has a sound, has a frequency, has a color, has a spirit to it. And those are the things that we build reality with. Those are tenets of stability of self. Um, your masculine, your feminine, and your unity of those two are foundational principles of self. And we're very much have. This is also why I think relationships don't really work, and divorce statistics, da, 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 because we are looking for relationships from a half-hearted place, because we think we are not whole. And that's very much what the paradigm sort of teaches you as well. What standard relationships teaches you as well. What even parentals and their own desires for us because of their paradigms and traumas can teach us as well, that we are halved and less than unless we find somebody to complete that. But that's codependency. Uh, Even stars know better in their seven genders of relationships of oscillating patterns and ebbs and flows and to and fro. Uh, is it more? Is your capacity for relation and relationship um, more of a leading or a follow or an intimate dance? Because dancing is a really great metaphor for this. And I love to lead dancing, but it's very funny to me because men hate being led, and women, even when they, want to be led, are hesitant because there's like a natural anticipation that it's supposed to be this kind of man, or it's supposed to be, da 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 da. It's so funny. Like, dance is so fluid and so beautiful and releasing, and yet even in the act of, so many people stifle it with these rules of only leading and only following, and it ultimately just hurts the dance and keeps you from feeling the music. Um, Three of swords, three of spades in the middle of this. Sword, spade, same thing. In the middle of this, and in a deep and royal and incredible spiritual purple, which is exactly that, exactly the way that I said that. Rather than lead or follow, are you, interwoven intimacy? Rather than male female, are you aware of your capacity for both? Um, the many triangulations that create fractal patternings of the self. And a lot of people are only habits and are only consumption and have no idea what that is built on. Um, and I think that's often why falling hard hurts so much, because we're unaware of this structure and the foundation of this body and this spirit that we reside in. Um, Prime numbers. Starting on a 9 is so interesting too because it is a mastery number. Um, but then it starts over. It's 9-3, like mastery number, major chord, maybe lots of rhythms, and then something more definitive, something more like single chords, basic chords. You can kind of hear every tone and every note, uh, and know what's going into it, rather than just kind of being blown away by polyrhythmic success. And understanding that is key to understanding the magnitude of primes and leading into the sevens, and that ultimately leads us to a reciprocal pattern, to a natural fractaling outside of ourselves, to again the ripples and pond that expand infinitely and that find community and find reflection of the self within that. So this eight, as much as the eight of clubs can be overwhelming and a little high stimulus fire, um, it is also a fire of passion, and so we must honor that as well. Much like you honor your rage, but that doesn't mean destroy, destroy, destroy. That means what are you going to build with it? That means how are you going to heal it, so that that frequency that can radiate outside of. When we seek destruction with our rage, we also destroy the self. When we seek judgment for our piousness, we are only showing our ass, really. When we like abide by the same principles and it's over our head, we really only show the world, not our coolness, or look at me, I'm so edgy and so political. No, you're hurt and repeating the same patterns. And I think a lot of our hate and disdain and casual racism is absolutely a sign of that. Um, be it absolutely anybody, because ultimately, if decolonization is to be fully adhered and fully embraced, then we're no longer looking in terms of black and white. Now it's not now it's a degradation of self to call yourself just white or just this or just that. Uh, in the same ways, it was uncouth when some white kid was using the N word. We become the same bullshit because we have all been so much more, because we all came from something that was more in tune with the earth. There were European indigenous tribes, there were Japanese indigenous tribes that were absolutely also suffering from the same types of genocide and the same types of re-education and reformation and assimilation. So it's an absolute disservice to boil yourself down to one thing when you can be so expansive. And when we want all of these possibilities in the world and all of this understanding, we have to represent that. We have to uphold that. We have to exist as that and be that, or we find ourselves uh, out of control and wondering why everything feels so constricting, and why the walls are closing in, when in fact we've been closing them in on ourselves. This 3 actually just gave me a really good idea. A very good idea. It may take me a little bit, but stick around and see what other journeys I can take you on in meditation or movement, so that we may all find a more foundational self. That's it. Woo! That's it. All right. Much like we are hanging out and there are cards in between us, we will take 3 deep breaths together and make ourselves available to the energies in our bodies and the energies in the stars because they are um, reflections of each other. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Oof, that tickled in a very fun way. And I could feel like breath and elongation like circulate around my heart, and it almost like tickled in my armpits, and like I could feel it underneath my like rib cage. um and that's very much like, rather than expansion, like seeking more and again climbing the corporate ladder, da 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 da, it's only one plane of expansion, that's only linear expansion, and that's expansion and hierarchy, then rather than broadened horizons, rather than expansive space time or what have you. Um, it's the ways in which we expand within ourself. Have you ever felt what it's like to fill your body with so much breath that you can feel it almost like you're slipping on a glove, and you can feel like your fingers perfectly fit into the form? Oftentimes, I think people feel very out of place in their body for one reason or another. Um, I think everybody does in some way, shape, or form. Um, and conversely, I think statistically self-harm has skyrocketed, and mental health has deteriorated, and diagnosis is um, reliably rampant. And in those ways, the breath can also feel like it's so short you're dying, or like there's so much energy in you that your skin is going to split, and it's uncomfortable. um but it's a matter of spirit in the vehicle. You are a vessel, you are a box for these things, and box, the black box, particle collision experiment box, a Schrodinger's box, even a black hole vortex in time space that, though may look two-dimensional, is actually galaxies and galaxies full. Um, when we understand it in those ways, I think we're more apt to be able to understand what's going on, what those sensations are, why what they're doing in our mind, and rather than build up pressure like a cooker, find temporal release valves in some way, shape, or form. Um, I hate, I hate with a passion. Uh, I shouldn't say hate. I reject modern notions of primitive. Um, entirely. I'm working on my own definition. Um, but the nature of you understands these energies. The nature of you wants to integrate these energies. Consumerism and industrialization and capitalism uh, want us to drown them out, want us to bury them, want us to bury them with no marker, even. Um, and that's when emotions and concepts and ideas get displaced in the body, and get and become unruly because they are displaced, the same way you would be, the same way anybody would be if they were displaced or estranged from what they thought was home, and all of your cells are conscious of your home. Also, on a very, like, I guess, lighter note, most most, I think, breathe from their chest or aren't necessarily aware of when they are breathing from their chest, and in a very literal way, just breathing in that moment. I could feel the ways in which my body and the energy was like, oh no, expand. Like that breath has to carry lower. That breath has to go deeper down. That breath has to touch the bottom of your ocean. Um, Rather than just filling our lungs. Have you ever felt what it's like for your breath to hit your root? Um, and what does that feel like? Which interesting, especially with Black Moon Lilith. Um, there are types of breathing that accentuate those notions and actually create a stimulus response just in nervous connection, nervous system connection, and just in muscles, just like the big toe relates to the body, relates to the booty, relates to the heart, just like the nerves in our pinky and our thumb, also interwoven into our shoulders and our legs and our hamstrings, and it's funny how just a small constriction in one point results in pain on the other side. That's what sciatica is. Ooh, oh, oh, interesting. Um, Ten of Cups, Ten of Swords, Knight of Swords. Some very Chiron shit right there. Our wounded warrior. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Who makes something beautiful out of these lessons. Um, I used to joke that I learned to be everything that I wanted because of all of the potent examples of everything that I did not want. Uh, it's funny how that can illuminate the contrasting beliefs, which is also exactly how I broke cycles of trauma, rather than, continue the cycle of my own personal immediate lineage. And in what ways does that expand just outside, like just uh, beyond the literal of lineage, or the literal of parentage, or the literal of um, history or memory, even? Um, Rather than forget, how do we heal and integrate? Rather than overwrite or whitewash our own history, really, how do we tell an honest truth so that more can learn from it? And that's very much, interestingly enough, very much what where my mind went with this, with these writing endeavors and things that I'm working on, but also this book that I made. Uh, where it wasn't just about me. Like, sure, yeah, if I got knocked on the head and I forgot everything that I know, how would I find my way back? But also, I'm surrounded by, I come from very lost people, and not by their own fault. They're a product of their own pain as well. Um, but they've let it consume in a lot of ways too, and that it comes with suppression. Like so much of aggression in culture that consumes us comes from suppression. I also resent the idea of something so cute that you want to squish it to death. Uh, i don't buy it. I don't buy it. If I don't care if it's something you can Google and doctors say it's a thing. Where does it come from? When did it start? Who coined it? Like all of these, like etymologically, where did this come from and why? Or is it just another way, just yet again, another way in which the science of associations, uh, the pseudoscience of psychology, uh, has fabricated a system to uh, direct us toward blindness, or fabricated a system to excuse the levels of narcissism that play into the capital consumer zeitgeist, or the puritanical patriarchal zeitgeist, because seeing faces in a tree, or feeling sounds from colors or whatever is like, whoa, schizophrenic. But if you're sociopath, uh, who compartmentalizes to an unhealthy degree, you're well adjusted for industrialization. Craziness. Craziness. This is a sick world. It's a sick world. And so we heal. It's a sick world, so we must heal internally so that we don't bleed on other people. And then other people are like, oh shit, why am I bleeding? Will you bandage this for me? Oh, you can't bandage this for me? How do I bandage it? Uh, those are integral steps. And oftentimes, even in that journey, we get caught and stuck on the will you bandage this for me? And we get caught in codependency. The Knight of Swords would not. I think the Knight of Swords can be a big skeptic, and careful not to be cold with it or to be so direct that you cannot deviate or detour, that you cannot be made to change. Uh, because that requires new information. There's nothing wrong with having an opinion and then finding out more information and reanalyzing your opinion or changing it entirely, or finding new facts and reassessing your standpoint on something. I have a lot of fun doing that. I enjoy questioning myself in those ways, um, because it compounds on the knowledge that I do have rather than destroys it. And I think too often we're maybe so afraid of change that we destroy the opportunity to grow. Um, the Ten of Cups being here initially shows that we do have all of this potential and all of this integral capacity to move. And like I said, it's our nature. Maybe that is the main component of primitive or of primal, rather than the ways in which we've created this like degradation and hierarchical like speciesism about it. The Knight of Pentacles was the bottom of the deck, and I think that's very much for all of this blossoming that we have inside of ourselves is our ability to see it as a gift. The gift of self, the gift of life, the gift of identity, the gift of authenticity. And that is your gift to yourself in validation. So you can look at yourself in the mirror and be like, that's you. I get it. But also our gift to the world. Our gift to the world is our honesty and our authenticity and our integrity. Our gift to the world is the ways in which we honor love in ourselves so that we can honor love outside of ourselves as well. Our gift of unity in our own right, the gift of capacity and resistance and contrast just in the self, which is so interesting because I love contrasting people, even like the most beautiful people like celebrity crushes. I notice that that's something that I always pick up on, whether it be like their natural features or their sense of style contrasting in some way, and it illuminates all of their best features or all of their best traits, and I'm a sucker for it. I think at the end of the day, my type is somebody that's really fucking good at being themselves, and that's it. That's all it takes to catch my eye, I suppose. Um, da, 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 da. I would say, as far as this energy, there is first some clearing to be done, and that is also in the ways in which you breathe. Uh, we hold so much of our breath, and we shorten so much of our inhales. What if you were to sit with your breath and inhale through your nose? What was that? 2 seconds, and then double that, compound it like the planets are doing. So two, so inhale two, then we do four exhale, or inhale two and do a six exhale, and do maybe intervals of that, or intervals of prime numbers if you're really feeling magical, um, and and put your intention into releasing that breath like it's reaching the horizon line, like the surface of your skin is the horizon line, and see what corners it can touch. Because you, as you're breathing naturally, like maybe it ends here, maybe the breath you feel it kind of roll off your shoulders. But what if you were to let your breath feel like fill out every bit of it? What if you were to exhale in such a compounded way that you felt it in your toes, that you felt it in the soles of your feet? Perhaps that is where we begin to feel our soul at all. Um, and with that, a simpler take on ujjayi breathing, but is a water breath is to create space, is to listen to the story. And the waters in the world are very much not begging; they're demanding to be heard now with broken dams and what have you, um, and heating tides. Uh, how do we make space inside for new stories? Not to overwrite what's happened, but to honor what's happened and bring forth progress, bring forth growth. Uh, like Tupac's book, A Rose from Concrete. Uh, I think often we consider if we consider ourselves as concrete, then we are infertile soil, or we give up on ourselves, or we hesitate because we don't feel fertile enough to create. Um, But what if you could thrive in that anyway? That's why the idea of the lotus is so prominent. But I like the Tupac example, and existing as a rose in concrete, being able to grow in any circumstance, being able to exist as beauty in any circumstance, uh, and that comes with no consumption. Our ideas of beauty are so tangible and uh, so much defined by the things that we have, or the things that we wear, the things that we can afford, or what have you. Brands, the way we brand ourselves, um, with other people's names at that. Uh, how do you like what is the brand on your spirit? What is that illumination? And maybe we've never seen it because we've never let our breath get that far. This is a moment in which we get to really put the pedal to the metal and see just how far we can go. Just how far we can go, just how far we can grow, and farther than and far beyond just a hierarchical system or a singular plane of trajectory. Even the universe expands in all directions. Even the Pythagorean theorem has a fourth dimension, which leaves us again on this three. Okay. Okay, party on. I love that message, and I have something brewing in this noggin of mine for exactly that. Um, but I'm going to a gathering of elders to pray and hold space with uh, other seekers, other movers, other shakers, other indigibaties, other uh, really incredible energy holders and indigenous minds. So it'll be coming just after that, and keep in touch because I'll post a bunch about that, I'm sure. And if you would like to be held in regard and in my heart in ceremony, then please let me know, because I am not going to um, I'm not going to pray for anybody that wouldn't want it. I feel like that's a breach of consent and energy in some ways, and I feel the resistance anyway that exists in that communication line. So if you have no resistance, or if you want to say to hell with resistance, let me know. I'll hold you in my heart for it. But I gotta get I gotta get going so that I can get there for it. But I really wanted to hold space for this and peace and ease before shit got weird and I went out into the woods and maybe liked a little bit of service. So love you. I appreciate you for being here very much. And I hope to see you again soon. And I will definitely see you at my next live, I bet. Um, and if you would like to support this little trip by investing in yourself, is a little bit of support all around, honestly, which makes me feel really wonderful. Then hit up my website. There's all kinds of interesting resources and courses to assist you in your own investigation and integration of inner discovery. And with that, I leave you with love. Until next time, Tanatako. Pardon.